First of all, the perspective that I'm bringing out, it's not new, but the idea is that there's one mission of God, and that goes through the entire biblical story. But that at the midpoint, Jesus comes and the strategies change. Okay, that's one big thing here. One mission of God, and that mission is to bring all the kids home. That God has a problem as a parent, that the kids have left home, they've forgotten their parent, and somehow God is seeking, while honoring the uniqueness and identity of humankind, not to turn us into robots or destroy us entirely or whatever, but to bring all the kids home. And the strategies in the Old Testament are strategies that are designed for God to be remembered and seen and known and responded to. And the one big strategy there is to take Abraham's family, which is of reasonable, manageable size, and to locate it at the one piece of property in the ancient world that would form the bridge through which most of the civilizations then current would have to travel at some time. In other words, to put them as the city on the hill. So the one mission of God is to bring all the kids home. The Old Testament strategy is to lock that community into a particular piece of property. The New Testament strategy is to remove that connection and scatter the community through the rest of the empires of the world. Now, one of the things that does for me is to keep it focused on others, that the story of the Bible is not about me and my obedience. Me and my obedience are very, very significant and very, very important, but the story of the Bible is not about me and my significance and my obedience. The story is about the great love of God trying to bring all of the kids home again, which means we become myopic in the church as well, trying to figure out how we're going to be better people. How can we do the checklist of what's in and what's not, and what's good and what's bad, and all of that? And that kind of stuff needs to be done, like any good family has to talk about that sometimes at meal table. But once the conversation becomes always focused on that, you lose sight of the purpose of the institution or the organization itself. It is not about how can we be obedient, but how can the mission of God be moved forward so that all the kids come home. That to me has been extremely liberating. Secondly, I suggested as we went along that we jump into the middle of the story. And that's why I think it's very important not to begin talking about the Bible with regard to Genesis, but that we need to start with where the story itself of the Bible story begins, and that's with Israel in Egypt and the Exodus. Genesis is extremely important, but it's extremely important in light of what God is doing to understand why and how God is doing this. And that's a very important thing as well. So my idea is that we jump into the middle of the story, Exodus. It's a story of redemption, but it's a story of the creation of a people who are going to be located in a particular spot for a particular reason. This is, in fact, the big picture of God. The backstory is Genesis. Leviticus is what it feels like when God moves into the neighborhood. Numbers is signing on the dotted line and how can we test this thing and how elastic is it? And Deuteronomy is projecting it into the future. Now, what I'm going to suggest again and again, too, is that I think there are three levels of literature and authority in the Bible, in each testament. One is foundational, the creation of the missional community. That happens in the Old Testament through the Pentateuch, and it happens in the New Testament through Jesus himself. Secondly, on top of that, are the authorized spokespersons who, as the community moves through history, help guide that community and direct it in a way that is appropriate to this foundational identity. And the third thing, which we're going to start looking at next week, is sort of the community's own reflections on and interpretation of and wrestling with that relationship. Now, that doesn't mean I think that that some of the Bible is less authoritative than others, but there is a kind of initial and then derived authority. We would not know who we are and what we're about if we took the Pentateuch and the Gospels out of the Bible. The rest of the literature is great literature, but the rest of the literature is built upon those two things. 2 times God broke into human history according to the stories of the Bible. 2 times God broke in and established a unique missional identity with the people that he redeemed. That's essential to the story.